Viewers, for 6 months, the voice of 50 lakh people across 10 constituencies was virtually muzzled. For 6 months, viewers, their representatives were barred from the one place that matters, the floor of the legislature. We are talking about Maharashtra. Yes, viewers, the representatives of approximately 50 lakh Maharashtrians and other citizens were not allowed to participate in any discussions on the floor of the House. They were debarred from the floor of the House. Viewers, they were suspended. Their dissent was quashed with an iron fist. 6 months ago, the Maharashtra Sarkar tried to subvert democracy. Today, the Supreme Court saved it, calling the suspension of 12 BJP MLAs illegal, unconstitutional, excessive, and irrational. The highest court of the land reinstated them, striking down this arbitrary suspension, this crackdown, viewers, on democracy. Yes, this reflects poorly on the Congress, the Shiv Sena and the NCP. All three are, of course, in government in Maharashtra, and all have been bemoaning the death of democracy. Over the last few years, you've heard their leaders. All three have also pledged to keep the BJP out because they rather blithely say that the Saffron Party is a threat to democracy. While the three parties who colluded to illegally, unconstitutionally, excessively and irrationally quash democracy with an arbitrary flick of the pen are today being slammed for their hypocrisy. What does the judgment say about the so-called Ansari League of the pro-democracy activist, viewers? This Ansari League comes up every so often, viewers, penning rather articulate obituaries about India's democracy. They pop up everywhere, even abroad, in some of the best institutions around the globe, saying that at the center, demonic forces have taken control and they're destroying every institution democratically put in place by great leaders like Nehru. Viewers, none of these fine and cravat-sporting liberal Democrats has written an anguished letter to the Chief Minister of the Maharashtra state government condemning him for his assault on the cradle of democracy, which is, of course, its legislative organ, the Assembly. None of them, mark my words, will even raise this issue in a wider forum, like a newspaper column or on television or in any other digital forum, or viewers in front of, for instance, like Mr. Ansari did yesterday, the Congress, the United States. So viewers, obviously there is an issue here. There is a selective reading. Tyranny of majority, when it is imposed by those who are ideological affiliates, is overlooked. Those that are ideological antagonists, is criticized. But for a few moments, viewers, let us look at what the Supreme Court has observed. It's quite landmark, this particular order. The Supreme Court's first observation, viewers, is scathing. Suspending the MLAs beyond the sessions is unconstitutional. So, Supreme Court says a suspension, fine, one session, okay, not beyond one session. Observation 2. Assembly's resolutions are malice in the eyes of the law and ineffective. Resolution directing suspension is illegal and irrational. Suspension beyond session impacts rights of the constituents and constituency. Inherent power of the legislature is not absolute. Parliament Assembly becoming more and more intransigent places. Places where, viewers, stubbornly, two sides clash without wanting to pull back. Well, viewers, let us very quickly, while the Supreme Court, of course, has saved the day, let us very quickly now look upon a few of the comments that have come from the Ansari League viewers. Yes, these parties have sat in judgment of others for far too long. So Supreme Court today has effectively called out their hypocrisy. Each one of these outfits, political parties, political leaders says that they are sworn to defending democracy. 3 of those parties today make up the government in Maharashtra, and they, viewers, in the Supreme Court's own words, and I will quote those words once again: illegally, unconstitutionally, excessively and irrationally assaulted democracy. Viewers, let me just take you over some of what these people have said. Hamid Ansari, of course, you heard yesterday. Cultural nationalism gives vent to intolerance and insecurity. Sonia Gandhi said, Ahankar, Tanashahi ki haar hai, which was the revoking of all farm laws, which were passed through parliament, by the way. Modi-style governance, shut them up, cut them, crush them, said Rahul Gandhi. Priyanka Gandhi said, BJP has torn to shreds the dignity of our democracy. Priyanka Chaturvedi, Shiv Sena MP, when she was suspended, says suspension of MPs is unparliamentary, undemocratic. Has she said anything about Uddhav Thackeray, her own boss? No. And his actions, which have been deemed by the Supreme Court to be irrational, excessive? No, of course not. Rahul Gandhi, Modi government is following in Hitler's footsteps. Derek O'Brien, rips poll reform bills, calls it undemocratic. This happened in the Rajya Sabha on 21st December last year. Viewers, there are many such examples and I can go over them. But this is not the time, really, to go over the hypocritical commentary that has been made. Tonight we must ask why there is this selective silence. What made these political parties conspire to attack democracy? First, I want to open this conversation out to Mr. Jethmalani, Member of Parliament, and of course others who have joined this debate. Mr. Jethmalani, nice to see you this evening. This is an important landmark judgment in a sense. Let's not gloss over that fact while we get into the nitty-gritties. The Supreme Court says that this is all sort of, irrational, etc., etc. Of course, the Maharashtra government has come out and said that, look, these people are in violation of conduct rules. How has this been squared by the Supreme Court today? Can you explain?
Well, Rahul, it's a little technical, but in a nutshell, the privileges enjoyed by every legislature in India as per the Constitution is the same privileges that were enjoyed by the UK House of Commons at the time we adopted our Constitution, which is 26th January 1950. So to see what the privileges are, actually one of the most shocking things is that Dr. Ambedkar, etc., all envisaged that we would codify our privileges so it wouldn't be left to this searching examination of what the House of Commons privileges were in 1950 to find out what our legislatures had privileges which they had. But anyway, the position in short was that the House of Commons in the UK had a power to suspend its members for disorderly conduct, right? But equally, it was limited by the period of the suspension. So that, in a nutshell, if there was a breach of privilege or disorderly behavior, as it was in this case, right, the outside limit was the remainder of the session in which the breach took place and in which the order was passed. Now, every legislature has its own rules, Rahul. But one thing is for sure, that the rule, and these rules are made under the Constitution. We have the rules governing procedure and conduct of business. And every legislature in India's rule says that it shall be till the remainder of the session. Rule 53, which the Supreme Court has referred to, said that for a first-time suspension, it shall be only for the day. And if it's persistent, then it can go on till the remainder of the session, but never beyond that. never beyond that. Why the Supreme Court has called it irrational is, notwithstanding rules framed by the House itself, which had been framed in the past, I mean, almost many years ago, almost some times immemorial, since the Constitution was adopted, you say that this will be the suspension period. Yet, you go well beyond the limit and you suspend for a period of 1 year. Now, that's unheard of. For disorderly conduct, this kind of excessive, disproportional punishment is what led the Supreme Court, to say that, my God, this is completely unconstitutional and irrational. Let's use words like that. And perverse.
Okay, so the government has let it be known that they're going to review alternatives after the order. The Speaker decided suspension days. You can't challenge the Speaker's power, and the Speaker also has the right to punish.
Rahul, I saw your little prelude before this show, and I thought it was a wonderful prelude. That these are people who constantly complain of, despotic behavior, subversion of the rule of law. But when a Supreme Court passes a judgment saying, look, please act, you have a right of suspension, but you can't do this disproportionate kind of suspension. Technically speaking, you could then suspend without expelling members of a minority party in a legislature for the rest of the tenure. Technically, you could do that. And that was what was claimed on behalf of the state of Maharashtra in the court. They said that we can suspend you for a period at our will and pleasure. That's how arbitrary they were. And look, when the Rajya Sabha expelled 12 members for much grosser behavior than that indulged in the 12 BJP, when the Rajya Sabha did it in the monsoon session, but which they took action in the winter session, they did it for the remainder of the session with a caveat that we will revoke the suspension if you apologize. That's how legislative wisdom should be operating in cases like this. I mean, this is bizarre. What they've done is completely arbitrary. It's excessive. I mean, it's practically saying that, we are a law unto ourselves.
Okay, so let me ask you, since you brought up the parliamentary imbroglio over the suspensions in Parliament of the 12 MPs, will they be back? And does this judgment set a precedent there?
No, they were only suspended as the Speaker was entitled to do up to the remainder of the session. So once that session is over, they come back to Parliament. That is humane, and that
Mr. Jethmalani, I'll leave it with you.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. I mean, look, there's an argument there. There'll obviously be an argument there. The opposition will say what it has to. But I just want to quickly ask you, since you are also, of course, one of the preeminent lawyers, is there a potential for a review here at all? Very quickly.
Well, I mean, there's a right of review. There's no right of review. It's a discretion. You can always review. I mean, you can be recalcitrant about the whole thing. You can think that there are grounds. That's up to you.
Sure.
Nobody says don't do a review, but I venture to state that there's a very limited chance of success of any review that's planned.
Okay, let me open this up. Thank you, Mr. Jethmalani, for taking the time out. It's an important day, viewers, because democracy has been saved, and one has to say this saved. Of course, there are many people who say that why didn't the Supreme Court perhaps go and pronounce some sort of a punishment? That, of course, we're leaving out because I don't know if the plea demanded such, but nonetheless, viewers, democracy saved from arbitrariness, from irrationality, from a degree of, the Supreme Court itself has said, of irrationality. I just want to open this up, and I want to go straight across to Tehseen Poonawalla, Manasvi Thapar, and Kishore Tiwari, leader of the Shiv Sena. Ishkaran Bhandari also there with us. But before that, let me get into individuals who are not really politicians in any way. Dr. Ranganathan, how do you look? I mean, I'm looking at it from a very basic lens, which is the Ansari League, who vents its spleen, before every forum and says India's democracy. Today they're of course very silent because it doesn't serve their interests, given that their own ideological bedfellows have been caught out by the Supreme Court. But nonetheless, how does this reflect really on what we are seeing around us today in this country?
Good evening, Rahul. No, this will figure up as news on page 17, bottom left column of 100 words. That is the situation in our country right now. But there are two issues here. Number one, and I've been reading the Supreme Court judgment. It's a fantastic judgment since evening, Rahul. So please permit me to elaborate on both issues. Number one, this is by all accounts a resounding slap, and I'm not mincing my words, on the face of the Maharashtra government, Maha Vikas Aghadi. And all those people who keep shouting, who have been shouting for the last 7 years that democracy is in peril, democracy, all those outragers and, panelists and all those people, they are going to be silent because they only speak truth to power. Please realize, Rahul, and the power out here is still Modi. Even though it is Maharashtra government, somehow, miraculously, things happen in Bengal, in Chhattisgarh, in Rajasthan, but the power is always Modi. So they are going to be silent because they speak only truth to power. Number two, and this is very important, because Supreme Court judgment also elaborates in detail. In fact, you pointed that out, although very briefly, that Supreme Court has been scathing equally in a bipartisan manner. You mentioned you took out one sentence out of the judgment and you said that, this is happening across our legislative assemblies and parliament and all parties are to blame. So, while the BJP would be pleased with this decision, they should be. The fact is that all parties indulge in disruption of the parliament and assemblies. So are we now going to refer all such cases to the Supreme Court? You know that there are 40 million cases pending in our courts and 68,000 cases pending in the Supreme Court. To be honest, it is embarrassing that matters relating to decorum of an assembly of the parliament or the parliament can no longer be settled inside the assembly or the parliament. I mean, think about it, Rahul. The rules are scrupulous and detailed. There is a rule book, for heaven's sake. They deal with the minutest of infraction and vandalism. There is CCTV footage available 24/7. There are dozens of witnesses at all times. There are marshals and guards, and yet we need to refer matters to Supreme Court. This is like nursery KG kids referring the matter to the principal. The sad fact, Rahul, is that we are cursed with electing either louts or Luddites. Every time, that's why I say this and I repeat, every time a parliamentarian disrupts the House, his term should be truncated by 4 months. 3 disruptions and he will have 1 year less to loot his constituency. What better way to turn a delinquent into an eloquent? Budget, monsoon, winter, every parliamentary session is the same old story. Every year, every term. And no one is interested in finding a solution. And this cuts across party lines, across legislative assemblies, state or central. I mean, of course. What happened in the parliament last session and the one before that was shameful. And the opposition parties are to be blamed for it. And I'm sure Tehseen will draw up a false equivalence of it. But anyway, let him do that. And the way these MPs attacked the lady marshals was sickening. But are you telling me that the BJP has indulged in the same? One doesn't even have to go back to the UPA era, Rahul, to find instances of BJP creating ruckus, indulging in vandalism, forcing adjournment. Their leaders even saying this was part of democracy. No. Just look at the states where non-BJP government are functioning. Rajasthan, for example, very briefly, just 10 seconds. Not a day passed by last 6 months without BJP creating havoc in the state legislative assembly, shouting slogans, disrupting the House. In fact, Rahul, you will laugh, but the Rajasthan Assembly has been adjourned sine die since September.
Rahul, is the lecture
across party lines.
Well, look, I understand that very well. And of course, no political party in this country is above grandstanding, etc. There have been people who've jumped onto the lectern of the speaker, podium, the speaker's lectern, etc. Some have jumped onto tables. We've seen people throwing mics at each other. We've seen it all, viewers. We've even seen fisticuffs, people being... it's just too long, the litany of infractions. But the fact here is, and this is where I want to come back to, viewers, it's the action. It's the action of the speaker. Now, the speaker is supposed to be a completely bipartisan presence, viewers. He is supposed to apply the letter of the law without any arbitrariness. The point the Supreme Court has made is this did not happen. The Supreme Court says the application was illegal, unconstitutional, excessive and irrational. And that raises a more fundamental question, which is, did the speaker become an instrument? And if he did, at whose behest? Why did he ignore the law that is set in stone, pretty much. And we heard Mr. Jethmalani talk about it. At the center, Mr. Venkaiah Naidu applied it, said 1 month, which is, or 1 session rather, which was what the law said. Here it was 6 months. And therefore I want to ask you, Tehseen Poonawalla, and this is a fundamental question. Look, I don't want to go over the Congress's past, which is hoary when it comes to, suspending the constitution. Forget about anything else. I'm not going down that route. I'm only asking you, Mr. Tehseen Poonawalla, what are we going to do about those 50 lakh citizens who didn't find representation in the House for 6 months? You have not just muted 12 MLAs. That's the tip of the iceberg. You have muted the power to belong of 50 lakh, perhaps even more constituents. I'm probably being charitable with the numbers. Tehseen Poonawalla, that is a undermining of the mandate. And you are talking about democracy and applauding Hamid Ansari for talking about the tyranny of majority. What about this? And here I'm asking you, please atone. Don't draw false equivalences tonight. Put your hand on your heart and say, we made a mistake. Sorry to those constituents. 50 lakhs and more, God knows. Viewers, and I can read out the list. Some of those are the poorest districts in Maharashtra. They need the most representation. What did we do? Cancel them out. Tehseen Poonawalla, an assault. Barbaric assault.
Rahul, at the onset, a good evening to you, to all your panelists, to all the fellow panelists, and to all your viewers. At the onset, I partially agree with the points my erudite friend Anand Rangthan made on the show, and even some of the points you have made on the show, that I'm glad that the Supreme Court judgment came. And I think that at some point we need to draw a line in the assemblies and in Parliament onto the arbitrariness of the way the Speaker or the Chair of the House functions. For example, Venkaiah Naidu, who I think, and a false equivalence is being drawn here, followed the rule. No, he absolutely violated Rule 256 of the Rajya Sabha. He suspended the members in another session, which has not happened. And my advice to those 12 MPs who were suspended was, some of them who met me, was that they should have challenged that in Supreme Court and they would have got the same order as the BJP got in the Maharashtra Assembly. Because that was arbitrary of Venkaiah Naidu. Similarly, as in this case, the Supreme Court has found it to be arbitrary. You remember, Rahul, and I remember you covering this in detail, the 2008, the first Operation Kamal in Karnataka, when Yedurappa ji was chairperson, he had brought in the police commissioner. The Speaker allowed the police commissioner of Bangalore to come into the House, and subsequently the opposition was curtailed, etc. And they went to Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court came down very heavily on that BJP government and the Speaker at that point. And therefore, this precedent is not the first, this judgment is not the first time, but it is a series of judgments where the Supreme Court has come into the House and has said, look, the House must function in a certain manner which is not ultra-wise to our constitution. And these judgments have come in Karnataka at the time of Yedurappa ji's few days government, when the Supreme Court directed the Speaker how the voting should be conducted, how it should be recorded. And similarly in the Maharashtra Assembly, when Fadnavis was Speaker for a couple of hours in that midnight coup, and the Supreme Court stepped in, made the voting on the floor of the House and directed how the voting would take place, including the video recording. So to that extent, Anand is right. Today we have all the evidences and the proof. My one request to both political parties is, particularly to the MBA, because I'm a supporter of the MBA, do not drag this issue. On the contrary, still go to Supreme Court, though it is now late in the day, on the issue of those 12 MPs suspended, because you will get a retrospective judgment. You will get a judgment on why those MPs are suspended in a wrong session, and that will that will set the precedents even further. But one thing that all of us today want as citizens of India, we want debate. And when Arun Jaitley said and broke our hearts, so Sushma Swaraj said that to disrupt Parliament is the fundamental right of a member and is how democracy functions, that has taken parliamentary democracy and standards down in our country. And I wish we can restore the lost glory of a Atal Bihari Vajpayee, of a Jawaharlal Nehru, of a Somnath Chatterjee standing up in Parliament and arguing. We want that democracy, that parliamentary democracy to be restored, and we don't want biased speakers like Venkaiah Naidu.
We've skipped over an important chapter. Look, I'm not here to carry the brief for anybody. I'm just saying we forgot. You see, viewers, there was a time when there was a defense minister. He was exposed in some scandal called the Tehelka scandal. So the defense minister, the floor of the House, viewers, was picketed. He could never speak. Went on for months. He couldn't get up. The defense minister of the country could not even answer a start question, let alone, viewers, speak during 0 hour. So let me tell you, this decline is ages old. As I said, forget about suspending MLAs. There's a government that suspended the constitution. You know, I just want to come back 1 second to Tehseen. Tehseen Poonawalla, I'll come to you. Dr. Anand Rangthan, I'll bring in GVL Narasimha Rao, another member of parliament.
I want to make one very small point.
Yeah, 10 seconds. Okay, 10 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, Tehseen, I appreciate your frankness, but I want to tell you this very frankly. When you ultimately you did draw a false equivalence, but I want to tell you, think of that lady marshal who got severely injured because a shard of glass nearly ruptured her jugular vein.
Please allow me to answer to that.
I agree with you.
Anand, I'm going to
agree with you, but Tehseen Poonawalla has made a very important admission. No, 1 minute.
If you allow me 20 seconds.
No, 1 second.
Just allow me.
You're not going to. No, you're not going to. You're not going to be. So you're just going to buy more time, and there will be, my time is precious here because I have other panelists to go to. But I just want to ask you fundamental. Since you've conceded the fact, prima facie, that the Speaker acted, and since you've also mentioned, 1 second, also mentioned other speakers around, the National Assembly, etc., etc. So clearly you've admitted prima facie that this was not right. Having said that, you didn't answer my original question. The muzzling of more than 50 lakh constituents. Forget the 12 BJP MLAs. Will you apologize to them? Will Rahul Gandhi, who claims to be this great Democrat today, go back there and apologize? That's the fundamental question. Does he owe an apology? Yes, no. Tehseen Poonawalla, very quickly.
And the fundamental answer to that is Venkaiah Naidu should apologize for 700 lives being lost of farmers when he passed the farm bills on a voice vote.
So he owes it.
Division of vote. Nothing
Fine.
could be more
Venkaiah Naidu, when he is pulled down by the Supreme Court, if he is pulled up by the Supreme Court, will apologize. In this case, the Speaker of the Maharashtra Assembly, who has irrationally, viewers, picked sides quite clearly to get rid of 12 BJP MLAs, has been caught out by the Supreme Court. Now, the fundamental question is, can Rahul Gandhi jump onto his soapbox and lecture the world on democracy? Can the Ansari League, which traces its entire lineage back to the Congress party, get up on their soapboxes and give lectures and do their own apology? I'll come to that question. Yes, BJP MP GVL Narasimha Rao, Anand Rangthan said that look, we are at this juncture today because we've come down a slippery slope. Everyone does it. How do you respond to that charge? What goes around comes around.
Rahul, first of all, I will answer that. First of all, let me protest Tehseen referring to the Honorable Vice President of India repeatedly by name. He's a very high constitutional office. Let's maintain some dignity when we refer to them. I think I protest. It's important that I must protest because I'm a member of the House of which he is chairman. We always refer to him.
I apologize for that. I apologize for that.
Refer to him with some respect.
GVLji, I apologize for that.
No, that's it. Okay. I think we should.
Sure, I apologize for that.
Thank you.
I meant to take it, but I apologize.
Okay, now coming to the question.
Yeah, I agree with that. I should have referred to him as chairperson or vice president, and I apologize for that. Yes.
Yeah, because I think these are very high constitutional offices, and whatever questions we may have, but we should refer to them with deference. Okay, now coming to the question. I think it's difficult. What happened in Parliament in Rajya Sabha, the whole country has witnessed those very ugly criminal scenes where the marshals were attacked, the lady marshals were attacked, even the chair was attacked. And in Maharashtra, the incident is something that they claim has happened in the chamber of the presiding officer, the speaker. And none of us have even seen this. So certainly it's arbitrary, excessive, and by no convention this can be accepted. But the question is now to ensure, I think after this judgment from the Honorable Supreme Court, does Parliament and the state assemblies, do they need to revise or amend rules so that no other state assembly can do this in future, because a lot of what happens in Parliament and assemblies is self-regulated. I think we should understand Parliament and assemblies are also institutions, independent institutions, and it's difficult for the court also to interfere in every case or adjudicate on every case. So they must, Parliament and assemblies must
maybe you should take the lead. Maybe BJP rule states should take the lead.
Such frivolous action.
We will be looking towards that. Okay, one second, Shiv Sena leader and Ishkaran Bhandari. Ishkaran Bhandari, your point, very quickly.
What has happened in Maharashtra is unprecedented.
Fine. Okay. Ishkaran Bhandari, very quickly.
Rahul, that is exactly the point. We keep hearing about judicial overreach. And technically, in fact, probably the legislature and the parliamentary proceedings are not to be questioned in the court of law. But what do we do when our legislature or our parliament fight like school kids and pass such orders which are so unconstitutional that the court has to say nullity, unconstitutional, substantively illegal, irrational? That is why it goes to court, and then court has to pronounce judgments, and tomorrow the parliament or legislature feels, are we to run the court because we are elected people, or will the Supreme Court rule the country? But the problem is, if you fight like school kids, if you pass illegal, irrational orders, then the courts will have to step in, and we have those dangers which also come into picture. And as to the Hamid Ansari school of thought, we have 60 MPs writing to US to deny a constitutional authority, Narendra Modi, a visa. We have reached those levels in this country which was never called as racism. MPs using their office to deny an Indian citizen a foreign visa. Forget the chief minister, an Indian citizen to be denied a visa who is not being convicted by any court of law. Did we call it fascism then? And lastly, one point, Hamid Ansari has been going on. I just want to say one thing on this. The question is not the platform Hamid Ansari shared, which was funded by anti-India forces. The question is not what he spoke there. The question is how people with such mindsets reached such high offices. Was this mindset the qualification instead of a disqualification? That is what we need to know as a country.
Rahul, can I come in?
Okay, well, that's another view. One second. I want to bring in Shiv Sena leader. Ek minute. Kishore ji, I just want to ask you a simple question. You're a senior citizen, sir, and I want to ask you a question. Mr. Uddhav Thackeray and some of his ministers in parliament position themselves as the saviors of democracy. Can they do so after this? Honest question to you, sir. Straight question after what the Supreme Court has said. Expecting an honest answer.
Our speaker, as Narasimha Rao told, our speaker is also a dignity with certain dignity. He is the speaker of the Maharashtra Assembly, and decision taken by him has got a very significant importance. The man who was humiliated, manhandled in the chamber, you are not a party, Narasimha Rao. He has taken the decision. Supreme Court has no authority to intervene in that. In fact, the Supreme Court has overacted. Supreme Court has referred something which is unwarranted as far as his decision is concerned. And we will take this the Supreme Court decision to the larger bench also. But only decision of the Supreme Court, it's not a jubilant part for the BJP.
Ishkaran Bhandari wants to respond. Nice way of deflecting the question. Question the Supreme Court, now say that even the Supreme Court is biased and has overreached. So that's a very neat way. Okay, Ishkaran Bhandari wants to come in. Ishkaran Bhandari wants to respond legally to Shiv Sena leader, Mr. Tiwari.
Yes. I need 30 seconds.
Constitutionally, a long position being told to your viewers, so I just want to speak on that.
My speaker is ultimate. My speaker is the final authority. Nobody can teach him. Nobody can educate him.
Let's not shout over each other.
He has taken the wise decision.
This is not the
my assembly will take a call on it.
Mr. Tiwari,
Ishkaran, my assembly will take a call on it.
Don't speak over the other gent.
Rahul, you are not allowed to speak for
You can do what you want to do. You can do a dharna outside the Supreme Court, no problem. 1 minute. Let Mr. Bhandari clarify a point of law. That's all. Yes, Mr. Bhandari. Go ahead.
Ishkaran doesn't know the correct constitutional provision.
Okay, Kishore, I know you Kishore ji, I know you're probably a little irritated because you have been called a senior citizen by Rahul bhai, and that is what you are reacting to. But please don't be so young and impetuous.
But he has a young heart. But he has a young heart, Ishkaran.
I said so.
He has a young heart.
My speaker has taken the white
Quite viral. He's got a young heart.
Rahul, you must apologize.
Don't be challenged.
No, let me, okay. So please don't be so young and impetuous.
Rahul,
the point is, the legal position is very well settled. As
Okay,
I started by saying the proceedings in a legislature should not be called into question in Supreme Court. But if you pass patently illegal orders, then judicial review does die, and that has been settled by Supreme Court in Raja Rampal case as well as other cases.
Speaker
So
was
please don't do blatant illegality. So Supreme Court does not
Ishkaran, my speaker was
Okay.
Okay,
Thapar Saab, let me bring in Mr. Manasvi Thapar. Mr. Thapar, democratic propriety, your party preaches that left, right and center, democratic propriety. Has it lost the moral high ground on this issue now? Finally, can I ask you this question? Thapar Saab, boliye.
Overly democratic party. Not
please, Kishore bhai, please let me make my point. Rahul ji, Narasimha Rao ji had written a very wonderful book known as Democracy at Risk. I think now after 73 years of Republic of India, we should come out with how to conduct democracy. Our parliamentarians, our legislative members have actually failed us. These are the people who should
don't give me this civics lecture, sir. I know civics lecture doesn't know. I'm asking you a straight question, sir.
Yeah.
You tell the whole world about how democratic practice must be undertaken, etc. I'm asking you, do you still have the right? Do you retain the right to do this?
Let me make my point.
लेक्चर देना दुनिया को बहुत आसान है सर ट्विटर पे, और फिर देखना कि फॉलोअर गायब हो रहा है. ऐसे थोड़ी होता है बात. अब मैं आपसे पूछ रहा हूँ, फॉलोअर्स आर डिसअपियरिंग बिकॉज दे डोंट बिलीव यू एनी मोर.
Rahul, it is
Lawyer
not about Congress or Rahul Gandhi. Rahul, this is not about Congress or Rahul Gandhi. This is about our democracy.
It is.
130
It's your government.
So
now don't make it about our democracy. Look, this bipartisan, selective bipartisan approach. When Hamid Ansari sits in the US, when he addresses the US, when he addresses some US committee at the instance of sorry to say, an anti-India grouping which has dodgy links, then it's not about our democracy. Then it's about democracy under the NDA, which is being murdered under the jackboot of an authoritarian ideology. I am now asking, आप लोगों ने क्या किया जी?
Rahul, may I make a legal point?
Thapar Saab, what have you done?
Rahul, the question...
No, don't make legal points. Let's make a rhetorical point here. Legal point has been made by the Supreme Court. We are not qualified. Let's make the rhetorical point.
Rahul,
and I'm asking you rhetorically, Thapar Saab, have you lost the right to preach?
It's not that BJP won or Congress lost. It's about we all are together losing in this conduct of democracy. The larger and the moot question.
Okay, great. Together we are losing. Together all of us.
Supreme Court.
Yeah, together. Everything is together except when the infraction takes place that suits your ideology. I'm not getting into this. This is rubbish. Rubbish. Sorry, sir. Rubbish. Have the courage of your convictions. Yes, Dr. Ranganathan. Very quickly, I need to move on. Yes. Yes, sir.
No, very quickly, Rahul, you an apology to Mr. Tiwari. He is not senior citizen. He is middle-aged. By appearances, he may look like a senior citizen, but for him saying that his speaker is right and correct over the Supreme Court is scandalous. But then again, शिव सेना, मिस्टर तिवारी, आपकी पार्टी है जिन्होंने कहा है कि हम ठोकशाही में विश्वास करते हैं, लोकशाही में विश्वास नहीं करते. तो आपके लिए सुप्रीम कोर्ट कुछ नहीं है. आप महबूबा मुफ्ती जी की तरह हैं जो कि शरिया में बिलीव कर सकती है, लेकिन अलग टाइप का शरिया.
आपका प्रमाण पत्र नहीं चाहिए. आपका
The last word has been said by Dr. Anand Rangthan. Pithili, I'm moving on. Viewers, we are moving on. This is an important story, viewers.